What's up, party people?
What's up? What's up?
Welcome to the first episode of the Cults, Crimes, and Spirits podcast. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Nina, and we're two cousins that recently entered our 30s, and we're like, let's start a podcast, because why not?
Yeah, why not?
Here on Cults, Crimes, and Spirits, we're going to be discussing some crazy-ass cults, true crime, and all things dark, mysterious, and spooky.
Crazy. Everything's crazy. It's all going to be crazy.
We're crazy. Andrea has a half-gallon water bottle.
That
Water
didn't,
bottle.
that didn't take long to get called out. All right. Yeah. You want to know what? I do. And there's a little lid that's magnetic. Mm-hmm.
I know you guys can't see it, but it's freaking hilarious. I wish you could. Because my computer made a noise. Yeah, we're going to try to get through this episode because, we recorded this episode yesterday, but dummy me forgot to hit record. So I guess we didn't record it.
We tried.
We thought we were. We thought we were recording.
Yeah, how much? Like 2 45-minute episodes? Just not recorded. But
yeah.
it's okay.
It was it was a good practice.
All right. You want to hear some funny shit? So my mom has had one hell of a weekend this weekend.
What happened?
So I get a phone call from her on Friday. She FaceTimes me and she is livid. And I'm trying to figure out why she's mad because she's driving and I'm just
she's driving and FaceTiming.
Yeah, I'm like road rage. Oh gosh. Like
living dangerous.
So she tells me that she got cheesed and I'm like, you got what? And she's like, cheesed. Apparently these two teenagers drove up next to her car and threw a piece of cheese at it and it stuck to the back window and slid down. And she said she whipped a U-turn so fast and tried to find them for 20 minutes. She was gonna cuss them out.
But then 20 minutes looking for them?
Yeah, she really did. She said she was gonna get home like 20 to 30 minutes later than usual because she was trying to find these teenagers that cheesed her.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
And then today she's wanting me to go to PetSmart with her, so I'm waiting for her to empty out her ashtray and I go into the kitchen and I'm like looking for a snack because I was pretty hungry because we were supposed to get lunch. And I'm making a snack and my mom just starts screaming and I run into the living room and the trash can's on fire.
What? Why?
I guess there was a ash still in the ashtray or ember something. And when she knocked it into the trash can, she didn't pay attention and she closed the lid and it just like it smelled like burnt paper.
Oh my gosh. Your mom almost burned the house down.
I don't even want to know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like, please don't call me, FaceTime me, text me. Like, I'll pray for you.
I was like, have you ever seen this episode of South Park where they're getting cheesed by these cats? The cats are pissing in their face and they call it like getting cheesed or something. And they get high. Yeah. That's what I thought of.
No, I have a picture. I'll send it to you. There was not even half of the piece of cheese stuck to my mom's car. And she had to pull it off when she got home and throw it away. I'm going to send you the picture right now. I can't believe I didn't send it to you. That's crazy. It's been a weekend. Yeah, I didn't know getting cheesed was a thing. But apparently it's the new hot and upcoming teenage thing because you don't really damage the person's car.
Yeah, I mean,
so you can't really get in trouble. Like, I'm sure you can, but you can't.
Yeah, I wonder if they made a TikTok video about it.
Yeah, I wonder if my mom's in it because she was probably like cussing and throwing her arms up.
Yeah. So I'm gonna tell you something that I found last night that was hilarious. I thought it was hilarious because
the fact that we recorded 2 podcasts or had 2 episodes and you didn't record.
Oh, besides that, yeah.
Tell me.
So after that, I went home last night and I saw Drew was showing me, my husband, he was showing me a TikTok video or something, and this guy was like funny things I never knew existed on the dark web. And I'm terrified of the dark web. I'm not trying to mess with that.
But no thanks. There's a lot of creepy stuff. Maybe we should do an episode on the dark web one day.
We should. It's interesting. But I gotta give props to these people because have you ever heard of getting gnomed?
Is that where someone puts a like garden gnome in your yard?
Apparently like they can put like tons of garden gnomes in your yard. Like you can, so it's a service that you can pay for. And like these people, like
Uh-uh.
whoever, I'm sure it's like untraceable because it's on the dark web. They will come to your house and they will put like tons of garden gnomes in your front yard. Okay. Yeah. And even inside the house. I'm sure that's an upcharge or something. But
Oh, I'm getting ideas. I'm
yeah.
getting
And
some
so
ideas.
I'm terrified of like dolls and gnomes. Um, so I was like kind of a little freaked out about that, but at the same time, I thought it was genius. Like it's pretty epic. So
Don't
especially
piss me off or I'll
yeah,
call someone to put a million gnomes in your
yeah.
yard.
And then the
Or
best,
like happy birthday to my
yeah.
cousin.
Oh no, 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 no. Um, so the best part though, the best part of it was you can pay also there's like a service for haunted gnomes.
Uh-uh.
Yeah. So so
Yes.
so the haunted gnomes, so like they'll put like one in a person's yard or something, and then like that person like probably will come home and be like, what the heck, and like take it and throw it away. Well, then they'll put two there the next day. So it's like you
Very
get
nice.
like they keep coming back. So like they'll like move them around and I don't know
Multiply.
exactly and like really freak you the hell out. So
I'm here for it.
yeah, and then the best part, well, besides the haunted gnomes, I love how this guy was like, uh, whoever's in that video, whoever's page he was like looking at said that, you know, they're the best, and so apparently there's competition for this. So
That's pretty
so
funny.
so getting gnomed is like there's competitors. So
Well, I
there's
better
more.
let my mom know about it before it happens. And she's like, I don't know what's going on, but gnomes just keep up here. Ooh, I might do that.
Yes.
Never mind. I'm keeping that one to myself. Thank you.
Well, if your mom listens to this episode, she's gonna know.
Oh,
So you
shit.
got to do it before this airs.
Okay. I'll think about it.
But is that not like the best? Like I didn't know like getting gnomed was a thing until I went home last night.
I learned something new today.
Yeah, I did
I've learned
too.
a lot this weekend, okay?
Getting gnomed and getting cheesed.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, getting into this episode, our very first episode on the day that music died. I really wanted to do this as our first episode, but then I thought maybe it's overdone. Maybe everybody already knows the story, so maybe we should do something else. Then I asked Andrea if she knew who Buddy Holly was, and she replied, I know that song by Weezer.
Yeah, it's a good song.
And
I've
I
been
was,
listening to it
yeah,
to get me pumped for this
yeah,
episode.
it is a good song. But I was like,
Apparently, the lead singer of Weezer, I forget his name right now, but he kind of does look like Buddy Holly.
yeah, he's got those glasses.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So Andrea and I were hanging out over the holidays, and I decided to go to YouTube and search for Buddy Holly so I could let her listen to some of his music. But when I typed Buddy Holly in on YouTube, Buddy Holly by Weezer was the first video that popped up. Not Buddy Holly, Buddy Holly by Weezer.
So I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Even YouTube.
Or times have changed.
So, for those of you who are like Andrea and don't know, February 3rd, 1959 is referred to as the day that music died. And the name, the day that music died, was coined by Don McLean's in his song American Pie, which I'm sure everyone's heard at some point. If you don't know the song, just go listen to it and you'll be like, oh.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, Andrea even knows. So,
for sure.
Yeah. The day that music died was the day that the world lost Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and J.P. Richardson, aka the Big Bopper, in a tragic plane crash. So this tragic story falls into, I feel like, the spirits category of the show because there are some mysteries surrounding the plane crash, like a potential gun going off during the flight. There's a whole coin toss, foreboding dreams, famous last words, an exhumation of a body, just a lot of really weird stuff that I feel like makes it appropriate for our first episode of the show.
I agree. There's a lot of weird stuff that went down
Yeah.
leading up to and during and after. So,
All right. So before we jump into talking about what actually happened on February 3rd, 1959, we're going to give you some background on the artist. We're going to start with the Big Bopper.
The Big Bopper.
Big Bopper. Such a fun name to say. It's a cool name.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay, so the Big Bopper was born Giles Perry Richardson Jr. in Sabine Pass,
Texas.
Sabine Pass,
Sabine.
Texas. He was the oldest of 3 boys. His family eventually settled in Beaumont, Texas. Richardson
Or
had
Beaumont.
or Beaumont. Damn, I don't know how to pronounce words.
I mean, you might be right. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
I just know that Beau is spelled Beau.
Let's say Beaumont, Texas. If
Yeah,
I'm
let's go
wrong,
with that.
someone can correct me on social media. I don't know.
Come for us. We don't care.
So Richardson had aspirations of becoming a lawyer and studied pre-law while attending Lamar University in Beaumont. He started working part-time at the KTRM radio station as a disc jockey. The station, I believe, is currently known as KZZB. And eventually, the station decided to hire him full-time, so he quit college like a true rock star.
I mean, I wouldn't see him as the type of person to study pre-law, but I could guess that going from that to a radio station is a lot better.
Oh
So
yeah, I'm sure
I
it
think
was
he
a
made
lot
the
more
right
fun.
choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in 1955, he was drafted into the Army. And after he served his 2 years, he returned to the radio station. And the radio station wanted him to develop a new show. During the show, he started calling himself the Big Bopper. And he named himself after a dance move that people were doing at the time that was really popular called the bop.
The bop, the
The bop.
twist, the
You,
mashed potato.
you know what it actually reminds me of? I was thinking about this earlier. You remember that thing that we had like in the 90s as a toy? It was like bop it, twist it, pull
Yeah.
it. I don't remember. Was it called
Yeah,
bop
yeah,
it?
it's called Bop It.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I was like, I think it's called
I
bop
used to
it.
love playing that thing.
Me too. I would play it for hours.
Yeah. Bop it, twist
I was
it, pull it.
addicted.
Yeah.
So Richardson eventually became the program director of the station, and he started his music career, I guess, as more of a songwriter. So while he was
That's pretty
still
cool.
working at the radio station, yeah, he started writing songs. And the song White Lightning by George Jones, which I feel like everybody knows George Jones.
Oh yeah.
His
Hell
song,
yeah, we do.
his song White Lightning was written by the Big Bopper. And that actually became Jones's first #1 country hit.
That's pretty cool. Way to go,
Yeah.
Big Bop.
And eventually, the Big Bopper was signed to Mercury Records by this guy named Harold Pappy Daly. He was a promotion director from Houston.
Happy.
So, after signing with Mercury Records, the Big Bopper soon saw huge success with his single Chantilly Lace, released in 1958.
Every time you say that, I always think about your middle name. I feel like that song was made for you.
It was made for me. I love that song, actually. Chantilly Lace. My middle name is Chantal. So, Chantilly. So give it a listen because it will get stuck in your head. It's very catchy. So Chantilly Lace, if you've never heard it, is basically a song about a guy calling up his girlfriend, having like this flirtatious phone call with her.
Oh, like phone sex in the 50s.
Exactly. Phone sex in the 50s. That will sum up that
Wow.
song.
How spicy.
Yeah. It's a little risque, but not too risque because it was the 50s.
The 50s.
Right.
Yeah.
This song was so popular that it sparked a reply from famous actress, blonde bombshell Jane Mansfield. If you don't know who Jane Mansfield is, she was really popular actress in like the 1950s and 60s. Her daughter is the main character on Law and Order SVU, Mariska Hargitay. And
oh, so keeping it in the fam.
Yeah, she's also an actress. And
yeah.
Jane actually also died tragically in a car accident. I would like to do an episode maybe one day on her because it's an interesting story. She had a very interesting life.
I'd be down to do an episode. I'd like to learn more about that.
Yeah, it's pretty
Since
crazy.
I didn't even know who Jane Mansfield was until
Yeah.
this episode.
Yeah. So anyway, Jane recorded a song called That Makes It in response to Chantilly Lace as if she was the girlfriend talking on the other end of the phone. Like she was responding to that 1950s phone sex.
Oh, go check that song out too. You want
Yeah.
to know what the girl says back?
It's not as good as Chantilly Lace, but it's all right.
But I see what she did there. She's like, "Ooh, this song's off the charts. I'm about to do something that can be compared with it, so maybe mine will blow up too."
Yeah. And I mean, it's not a bad song. So check them out.
Especially for an actress.
Yeah, listen to them together. All right. So with
Back to
all
back.
yeah, with all of the success from Chantilly Lace, Richardson decided I'm going to take some time off from the radio station and join the Winter Dance Party tour.
Don't do it, Big Pop. Don't do it.
So at the time, Richardson was married to his wife Adrienne, who with whom he had a daughter Deborah and a son on the way, a son that he never got to meet, but in a strange twist of fate, his son would meet him one day, which we'll get to that later.
What?
Yeah, very interesting. We'll get to that. All right, so moving on for now, Richie Valens. He was born in California. His full name was Richard Stephen Valenzuela. He has a
Fancy,
really,
fancy.
yeah, really pretty name. It's fun to say, Valenzuela. Okay, so when Richie was 16, he joined a band, like a local band called the Silhouettes, and they just played local venues mostly. And one night, Richie was discovered by the head of Delphi Records, Bob Keane. Bob signed him right away. His first single, Come On, Let's Go, did well, but it was his second single, Donna, that was a smash and went to number 2 on the charts.
Anna.
Yeah, it was written for his high school girlfriend at the time. The song, it really takes you back. It's like the 50s in a song. When I think of the 50s, I think of this song.
So if you want to time travel back in time, just put on Donna by
Yeah.
Richie.
And I don't know a lot about like, I mean, I know records and there's like an A side and a B side. Well,
Yeah.
when this came out, Donna was like the A side. That's what they thought was going to be the hit. And on the flip side, from my understanding, was the song La Bamba. And the B side was something that, they thought might or might not do good. It was kind of a
Yeah, usually they
throwaway.
put like all the best stuff on the A side and then
Yeah.
the not so what they think is not so good on the B side.
Yeah, so La Bamba apparently was on the B side, but it blew up. It's not like Richie didn't originally write this song, but he turned it into rock and roll. So it was originally like a Mexican folk song. It's been played at weddings for years. Like it's a traditional Mexican folk song.
Yeah, I've definitely heard it before. I've heard La
Yeah,
Bamba.
yeah, and
I just don't
that's
know which version.
yeah, well, Richie's you would know. A lot of people have recorded it since, but I feel like his version is the one that stood the test of time. That's the one everybody thinks of. But I think La Bamba, the Mexican folk song, has been around since like the 1800s or something. So
Wow.
he took something and turned it into something completely different. And it's kind of what he became well known for because La Bamba, it was the first Latin-based song that made the transition to like pop and rock audiences. So he helped pave the way for a lot of other artists. Richie didn't even know Spanish, so he had to learn. He didn't speak Spanish, so he had to learn the song and learn how to sing it. And it reminded me of
Wow.
yeah, it reminded me of another like Mexican American artist, Selena. Everybody loves Selena Quintanilla.
Yes.
So she didn't know how to sing in Spanish either. She didn't know how to speak Spanish. So she had to learn that as well. So I thought that was very interesting. And,
And that's not easy.
no,
I
and
took like 3 years of Spanish.
yeah, I did too. And I don't even know like hardly how to say anything. I don't know.
Exactly.
I know a few words. That's about it.
Props.
Yeah.
Props to them.
Yeah. So, and Richie helped pave the way for artists like Selena.
Thank you, Richie.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Richie did that. And there was a movie called La Bamba made about Richie's life, in which Lou Diamond Phillips portrays Richie Valens in the film. And it's a pretty good film.
We'll have to watch it.
Yeah, you check it out.
When did he decide to join the ill-fated Winter Dance Party tour?
Richie was doing really well at the time. He had just bought his mom a house. He really wanted to be able to buy her a house. So that's something that he did get to accomplish before he passed. And I think he saw the Winter Dance Party tour as like an opportunity because there was a lot of artists on the tour, like the Big Bopper, that were up and coming like him. So I think he saw it as a good opportunity. It was a good group of artists. So, he hopped on the ill-fated Winter Dance Party tour.
Don't do it, Richie. Don't do it. At least he got to buy his mom a house.
Yeah. All right, so moving on. Buddy Holly was born Charles Hardin Holly in Lubbock, Texas in 1936. He was nicknamed Buddy by his mother, who thought the name Charles was too big for her little boy. Because I was
Well, that's
like,
cute. But
yeah,
like you named him, so
yeah. I was like,
maybe. Maybe the dad did.
yeah, maybe the dad named him. But my dad's name's Charles too, so I was like, where did Buddy come from? Because we don't call
Yeah,
my
because
dad.
that's not a common nickname for Charles.
Yeah. So it was a nickname by his mom, and
But
his
it's stuck.
it did. Yeah, and his last name is actually spelled Holley instead of Hollly because most people know Buddy Holly spelled Hollly, but there was a misspelling of his last name on his first recording contract, and after that, like no one bothered to fix it, and it just kind of stuck with him. But I read that he didn't really mind, so
Yeah, I mean it's just one letter. It's just
yeah,
an E.
it's still pronounced the same. So
Yeah. No big deal.
yeah. So after high school, Buddy formed a band that played mostly country western songs until they got a chance to open for the king himself, Elvis Presley, in 1955. And that inspired Buddy and his band to go in a different direction completely. And they went more on the rock and roll side.
I wonder if you could find any of like the early Western, like country Western stuff. I wonder if it's out there somewhere that Buddy Holly did.
I don't know. I don't know if they recorded it or if they just played it like
Like
more
in
local.
saloons and
Yeah,
stuff.
saloons.
I don't
I don't know.
know.
That makes me think of like old western.
All right, in a bar,
like a
a
shootout.
club. Yeah,
Shootout
they're
in
gonna
the
shoot out in the dirt road outside the saloon.
yeah.
But yeah, I understand watching Elvis Presley wanting to get with the rock and roll though.
Yeah.
It was up and coming.
Oh yeah. It was definitely on the rise, and I think Buddy saw that and he was like, this is
He was
the
like,
new direction.
cha-ching,
Yeah.
cha-ching.
Shortly after that, Buddy and his band began recording in Nashville under the name Buddy Holly and the Three Tunes, but the group's name was later changed to the Crickets.
Yeah, it's sticking with me now. I think I like the Crickets.
Yeah, the Crickets. I like that better than the Three Tunes. It just doesn't roll off the tongue.
Nah, the cricket sounds cooler.
When I was doing research for this episode, I discovered Buddy Holly and the Crickets were the first all-white band to play at the historic Apollo Theater in Harlem, New York in 1957.
Wow, really? The first?
Yeah, so get this. At the time, there was an R&B group called just The Crickets, and the booking agent mistakenly booked Buddy Holly and the Crickets, thinking he was booking the R&B band The Crickets.
Now that's funny.
Yeah,
I bet people showing up for that show had no idea what was going on.
they were expecting the R&B group, The Crickets, and when, Buddy Holly and his band that are, just white as hell walk out on
Rock
stage.
and roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, rock and rollers.
Yeah. They were almost booed off the stage, but I read by like the second song or so, like the crowd was getting into it and they were like, oh, okay.
We'll give it a chance. We'll hear them out.
Yeah. So apparently they won the crowd over, and that's pretty significant at the Apollo Theater because, they're pretty famous for their like amateur nights, and people actually get booed off the stage. So the fact that Buddy Holly and the Crickets didn't completely get booed off is really good.
Yeah, and that means they must have made some new fans too. Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting fact. And
that is crazy.
Yeah, because I grew up watching.
Yeah, the Apollo is pretty.
It's huge.
They're pretty harsh.
Yeah. They like I've seen so
they
many
don't
people,
care.
I used to watch like with mom and dad, we'd watch like amateur night at the Apollo, used to come on TV, and like people would get booed off all the time. It's mostly comedians, but I can only imagine.
Yeah. But still, for real.
So Buddy Holly and the Crickets recorded several hits together before breaking up towards the end of 1958, like That'll Be the Day and Peggy Sue. So the band supposedly broke up due to just differences. I think they were just on different paths at the time, but I think before Buddy passed away, they were talking about like getting back together. And so, but obviously that never ended up happening. In the summer of 1958, Buddy met his wife, Maria Elena Santiago. She was the receptionist for Pure Southern Music Publishing Company in New York City when Buddy and the Crickets made a visit for work. Buddy asked Maria out on a date, and on their very first date, he proposed. And she
That's
said,
crazy.
yeah, and she said yes. So, well, actually, she
That's
told him,
crazier.
yeah, she thought he was joking, so she was like, okay, do you want to get married now or after dinner?
Like, can we eat first?
Yeah. And then she said she made him come the next day because she really thought he was still like just crazy and like
Messing
joking.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was like, well, you can come to tomorrow because tomorrow's Saturday. You can come and talk to my aunt who she lived with and ask her like, if we can get married. And she
Yeah.
said, sure enough, about 9 o'clock the next morning, he showed up and she really didn't think he was going to, but he did.
Wow.
And they got married a couple weeks
That's
later.
cute.
Okay, so after Buddy and the Crickets broke up, Buddy and his new wife moved to New York City. And supposedly, Buddy was having some financial issues due to the breakup. There was money that he hadn't been paid that he was owed. And around the same time, Buddy and his wife found out that they were expecting a baby. So Buddy started calling around. He was desperate for money. Um, his wife's aunt was helping them out, and she wasn't like she didn't mind helping them out, but Buddy minded. He didn't want her aunt keeping them up. He wanted to provide for his growing family. And so he was
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna go on this tour because I think it paid $2,500 a week at the time.
Oh, that's pretty good for the
Yeah.
50s, 60s.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. So he was like, it's only gonna be like I think it was like a 3 week, it's 24 days, 24-day tour. So
So like
he
less than a month.
yeah, so he was like, it's not gonna be that long. He was like, I'll be back home, I'll have money, we'll be good. So that's unfortunately how Buddy ended up on the Winter Dance Party tour.
That's sad. He just wanted to make sure
Provide.
that his baby had a good life.
Yeah, he just wanted to provide for his family. In 1978, the movie titled The Buddy Holly Story was released, starring Gary Busey as Buddy Holly. I would not have guessed that Gary Busey could play Buddy Holly, but he did it. He actually did a really good job.
Wait, that's the guy from like the Adam Sandler movies that always looks like cracked out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. He always he always looks
What
super
the
messed
hell?
up. Like he's a little out there, but he did a good job in this movie. Like you would not have think, and
He's a great
lot
actor.
younger. Yeah, he is a great actor. I love Gary Busey.
Well, is there a way to watch this movie?
I think you have to rent it. But it might be free on something. But I looked it up a while back, and I think on just about everything you had to pay for it.
It'd be interesting to watch.
Which is odd considering it's like from 1978. You think it'd be free on like everything.
For real, it's that old. And
Yeah.
you have to rent it. But
Mhm.
we're not in the 90s anymore.
Yeah.
All right, so the Winter Dance Party Tour kicked off on January 23rd in the George Devine Ballroom in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And the headliners on the tour were, of course, Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and Big Bopper, but there was also Frankie Sardo and Dion and the Belmonts. So since Buddy Holly had recently just broken up with the Crickets, he recruited Waylon Jennings, Tommy Alsop, and Carl Bunch to play with him on this tour. So they took the place of his band.
The Crickets.
Mm-hmm. Now this tour was not well organized. It was all over the place. They nicknamed it the Tour from Hell because it took place in the upper Midwest during the middle of winter.
Yeah, like the route just made no sense at all.
Yeah.
It didn't logistically make sense.
Yeah, it had them like scheduled to start off in Wisconsin, then on to Minnesota, then back to Wisconsin, back to Minnesota, then to Iowa, then to Wisconsin, then to Iowa. So you get the idea. It was
So much backtracking.
Yeah, it's like
for no reason.
Yeah, just finish up in Wisconsin, then move on to Minnesota, then to Iowa. I mean, that's what you should do.
Especially in the winter.
Yeah, I feel like they lost like so much money, backtracking how much they spent in gas, not to mention, making the artists miserable.
Yeah. For no reason.
Yeah. So this was also taking place. I read it was one of the worst winters that part of the country had apparently seen in a long time. So it was like negative degrees below zero, negative something,
To negative degrees below zero.
negative below zero. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's what negative means. But
Yeah, me too. But I get your point. Like,
yeah.
freezing fucking cold.
Oh yeah.
And what? They gave them fucking school buses.
Yeah, school buses that weren't fit for school kids anymore. With
Yeah,
no
so
heat.
let's give it to these up and coming musicians
Mm-hmm.
to go back and forth between Wisconsin and Iowa and freezing temperatures.
They were let's see, they were burning bonfires in the aisles of the buses, which seems kind of dangerous.
They were
But
taking shots.
yeah,
Like, that's
trying to
weird.
stay warm.
Yeah, that's rough.
On February 1st, the day before their last show at the Surf Ballroom, Holly's drummer, Carl Bunch, had to leave the tour because his feet were literally frostbit.
I feel like that might be a drummer's worst nightmare. Anything to do with the hands and feet.
Yeah, you kind of need those.
Yeah.
So Carl actually rejoined the tour a few days later after a brief hospital stay. But this was the breaking point for Buddy. He was like, he was tired of freezing on the buses. He was tired of not having time to wash his clothes because the buses would break down so much. What do we say? What they went through like 5 buses in the first 11
Yeah.
days of the tour. Yeah, they would break down so much that sometimes they would arrive to the show like minutes before they had to go on stage. So they didn't have time to wash their clothes, they didn't have time to relax, barely had time to warm up. I mean, from freezing.
So they're like frozen and rushed. Sounds great. I would
Yeah.
be in such a wonderful mood. I'd be like, yeah, I'm ready to go on stage and kill this show. Nah, they were probably like, I'm ready to go get warm. Let's play some instruments and jump around.
Yeah. So on February 2nd, the tour arrived in Clear Lake, Iowa for their show at the Surf Ballroom. Get this, it was actually not even a scheduled stop on the tour. No, the tour promoters called ahead and instead of giving them a day off, last minute booked the show at the Surf Ballroom. So like they couldn't even have a day off. 24-day tour, no days off.
That sucks.
Buddy decided he was gonna, when he got to Iowa, he was like, I'm gonna charter a plane to take him to the next show date. So like their next show was in Moorhead, Minnesota, but he was gonna fly into Fargo, North Dakota, because I guess that was the closest airport to Moorhead. And the rest of the tour was gonna stop on the way to the show in Minnesota and pick him up and whoever else went with him on the plane. So that way, they would have time to rest and do their laundry. So Buddy asked the manager at the Surf Ballroom, Carl Anderson, to help him make arrangements for getting the plane. Anderson called the Dwyer Flying Service and flight arrangements were made with 21-year-old pilot Roger Peterson.
Too young.
Yeah, he was really young. He had only been flying for about 4 years. So
First red flag.
The fee per person for the flight was going to be $36 a person, $108 in total for the 3-seater Beechcraft Bonanza.
That's a lot of money to ride in a little 3-seater.
Right?
I don't know if I would do it, but
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to freeze to death either, so.
Yeah, because I put it into like some calculator online because I was curious how much money that was in like 1959. So $36 is like 300 and something and like in today's money. So like that's
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot for, like you said, a little tiny 3-seater plane.
Yeah, you can buy like a $300 Delta ticket to Canada. So like
Yeah.
I don't.
And be in like a nice
Not
nice
a
place.
3-seater.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know if it was right, but that's what I put it in 2 different converters that I found on YouTube, on Google, and that's what it said. So, and the whole flight altogether was like just over $1,000.
Yeah, I mean, sounds
That's
about right
crazy.
for the 1960s, 50s.
Yeah. Plus, flying was still kind of new, so maybe, it was more of a luxury then. I mean, it still is a luxury now, but back then I'm sure it was a bigger luxury.
Yeah.
Well, supposedly Buddy offered a seat to Dion DiMucci of Dion and the Belmonts, but when Dion found out that the cost was going to be $36, he said he decided not to go because Buddy hit the magic number in his head. And what he meant by this was $36 was how much his parents' rent was And he said his whole life his parents argued over that $36 because apparently his dad didn't work, so he couldn't fathom spending that much money on one flight because he just thought of his parents arguing over that $36 his whole life.
Oh, a number like 36. $36. Linking to like a childhood trauma is like,
Mhm.
nah, I'm not gonna get on that. That's already just like bad juju with how much I have to give you. Like I'm
Yeah.
not doing.
So I mean that resonated with him, and
Yeah, that's
probably, I
crazy.
mean, it saved his life. I mean,
Yeah, it
honestly.
really did.
So, after asking Dion, apparently Buddy asked his bandmates Tommy Allsup and Waylon Jennings if they supposedly accepted, and they were all set to fly with Buddy. The Big Bopper had been battling the flu, and it had got worse, so Jennings gave up his seat to the Big Bopper.
Oh, how sweet. That's
Yeah,
nice.
so he could
Well,
get, yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's nice in theory. It
Yeah,
ended
he
up
didn't know what
not
was gonna
being.
happen.
Exactly. He gave up his seat to the Big Bopper so that he could get there ahead of time and like get some actual rest so that he could get to feeling better. Then Tommy also ended up giving up his seat to Richie Valens, but he didn't want to. Like, apparently Richie had asked him all day to give up his seat, let him fly, because I think Richie was just tired of freezing on the bus too. So, because he actually had a huge fear of flying, which I'll get into in a second. But Tommy Allsup said, he kept telling Richie no all day. He was like, "No, I'm not giving you my seat. I want to go." And he said for some reason, Richie asked him one last time, closer to the end of the night, and finally Tommy Allsup was like, "Okay, I'll flip you for it." And he said he has no idea like why he decided, okay, well, let's flip a coin.
Yeah, that's kind of strange. Out of
Yeah,
nowhere.
especially since he told him no all day.
That's weird.
Yeah, so he told Richie, he said, call it. And Richie called heads, and it was heads. So Tommy also gave up his seat to Richie Valens. And that's the famous coin toss. I mean, it's just weird.
Weird turn of events. I wonder what made him want to flip that last time instead of telling him no again.
And knowing that a coin toss saved his life,
Yeah.
it's just mind
The
blowing.
universe works in crazy ways.
And like I said, Richie had a horrible fear of airplanes and flying. And this fear actually stemmed from another plane crash that happened 2 years prior on January 31st, 1957. And it's so weird because, I mean, this plane crash happened almost 2 years to the day. Like
Yeah, that's kind of strange. The
January,
timing.
yeah, January 31st and February 3rd. Like crazy.
Spooky.
So this plane crash involved two fighter jets who were testing their radars, and they were flying over the Tacoma, California area. Not sure if I said that right, but that's what we're going with, Tacoma, California. Then, shortly after 11 a.m., one of those jets struck the wing of a DC 7B transport plane. Shortly after the crash, the transport plane actually crashed to the ground of the Tacoma Congressional Church, killing all four people on board. And something else I thought was interesting was there's four people on board that plane, and there's four people on board, Buddy, Richie, the Big Bopper, and their pilot.
That's weird too. I
Yeah.
didn't even think about that.
The pilot of the jet was killed, but the radar operator that was also in the jet was able to parachute to safety. So at least one person did survive out of that plane crash. But parts of the plane actually fell onto the playground of the Tacoma Junior High School, which was actually adjacent to the church where the plane actually crashed. And so it was just raining debris onto the playground at the junior high school. And this is where Richie actually went to school. So
Wow, that's scary.
Richie would have been out on the playground at the time. And at the time, there was over 200 boys outside on the playground, like finishing up their, like, I guess, like maybe gym class or outdoor activities. I don't know.
Yeah.
So Richie would have been there, and he would have been on the playground at that time. But he was at the funeral of his grandfather. So he was not at school that day.
That's pretty rough.
Yeah.
That would be a rough day. I wouldn't want to go to my grandpa's funeral and then find out that your school just got rained with pieces of plane. Did it kill anyone?
Yeah, it did. It actually killed three boys. It killed Robert Zalen. He was 12. Ronnie Brand, he was 13. They were killed on site. And a few days later, a boy named Evan Elsner, who was also 12, died from his injuries, and over 75 others were injured, some pretty bad.
That's so sad. Those poor boys.
And Richie's brother, Bob Valenzuela, later said, "If we hadn't gone to my grandfather's funeral, Richie would have been out there in the playground. My grandfather's death saved Richie's life."
Yeah, that's true. His grandfather was looking out for him, spared him a couple more years.
Yeah. I mean, because you think if he had died, he was like 15 at the time, 14
No
or
one would have
15.
known.
Yeah, no one would have known who Richie was. So I mean, even though his life was spared for only 2 more years, he
Yeah.
accomplished a lot in those 2 years. I mean, he bought his mom a house, had hit records. I mean,
No La Bamba.
yeah,
Not
we're
his
talking
version.
yeah, we're talking about him all these years later still, and it's amazing. Like if he had died on that playground, we wouldn't know any of that.
Yeah. Things happen for a reason.
Yeah, for sure. And if you, whenever you get a chance to watch La Bamba, they actually like the opening scene of La Bamba. I think it's the opening scene. Like it's been a while since I've seen it, but I'm pretty sure it's at the very beginning of the movie because I was like, I didn't know about this plane crash until I saw La Bamba, and I was like, what is this? Like, because I was like, why are they starting out with the plane crash? But it wasn't that plane crash, it was, I mean, it wasn't the plane crash that Richie died in. It was this plane crash. You actually see it in the opening of the film. So you kind of get an idea of like where his fear of flying came from because they talk about, his fear of flying in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, that's a cool way to start it. We're
Mhm.
gonna watch it. Maybe we can watch it in 2 weeks.
Yeah, when we hang out in
Yeah.
February.
When we see each other.
Yeah. So obviously, because of this crash, Richie developed, his fear of flying and fear of airplanes. And Richie used to have nightmares about flying. And I just wonder if they're nightmares or if they were like premonitions.
Ooh, yeah, like he having nightmares about what happened, or did he know what was going to happen?
Exactly. So I don't know. I just kind of thought that was interesting because he had really bad nightmares, really
That
bad fear,
that kind of reminds me of like Final Destination.
right? Like, so obviously, he realized, I have to overcome this fear because if I'm going to go on tour, I'm going to have to fly. But, it didn't change the fact that he was still afraid. He didn't like
Yeah,
to fly. He didn't really want to fly, I don't think, more than he had to. The fact that he even wanted to get on this plane when he could have just took the bus
that
just
just
tells
tells
you,
you how bad
yeah,
the conditions were.
to be able, like, they had to be so bad that he would rather take his chances flying, which he hated, than be on that bus another night.
Yeah. Ooh, rough.
So Richie wasn't the only one that was having nightmares. Supposedly, Buddy Holly and his wife were having like weird dreams that also involved airplanes, but not like an airplane crashing necessarily, but just weird dreams involving an airplane and like Buddy leaving his wife on the roof of an apartment building and getting in an airplane and like taking off and looking out the window like back at her. It was weird. And then
Yeah.
I read somewhere where supposedly she had a dream of like something crashing, like a fireball crashing into a field, which, they wrecked in like a cornfield. So that was a little weird, but it wasn't like a plane, She just saw like a fireball
Oh, just
crashing
a
into a field.
fireball.
Yeah. So I couldn't find that on a very credible, like super credible sites when I was doing research. So take that with a grain of salt. So I don't know if that actually happened, but it's interesting if it did.
That would be crazy if like three people had dreams about that.
It's like they knew something was gonna happen. And supposedly there's this picture of Buddy from like maybe a year before that I haven't seen the picture, but I read about it of Buddy getting off a tour bus. And instead of having like regular luggage, I guess he put his luggage and stuff in like an airline bag. So he was getting off the bus, but he had like an airline type bag. So
Weird.
they kind of thought that was like foreshadowing the crash, but I don't know.
Some people, I mean, there's a line between digging too deep into things and it
Oh yeah.
being weird, but I don't know, that is kind of strange.
Yeah. After the show at the surf ballroom ended around midnight, Buddy called his wife because she said he called her every night. And he supposedly told her that he couldn't take it anymore. He was going to look for other transportation. She said he never mentioned a plane because she would have said no. He didn't want her to worry because she, of course, was pregnant. And she thought he meant like he was going to look for another bus, like a bus that had heat, just a better bus and like help pay for it so they didn't have to like deal with the conditions that they were dealing with.
Let's take an airplane.
She never thought of an airplane when he said that. And he told her he
But
loved
they're
her.
so sweet.
He told her he loved her, and she didn't think anything of it. And
How
so
sad.
Buddy, Richie, and the Big Bopper were all set to be driven to the airport. And that's when,
Yeah, I find this part right here very weird. I have this in my own separate notes because I was like, that's fucking crazy.
so Buddy told Waylon before he left, he was like, I hope your damn bus freezes up again. To which Jennings replied,
Well, I hope your plane crashes.
those are words that Jennings thought for years that he had caused the plane crash.
Yeah, that's something that like you never should say to someone that's about to get on a plane.
Like
It's
never.
like really fucked up to say.
Yeah.
Because if it happens, then you might be at fault. I mean, you're never really the reason, but just the fact that you put it in the universe.
I mean, I definitely don't think Waylon was, I definitely
He
don't
was
think,
just joking,
yeah, I
but
definitely don't think he meant it, but I mean, that's really gonna haunt you. And apparently it did haunt him.
but how did Maria also blame herself? Like how?
Yeah, so she said if she had went with Buddy, that he would have never got on a plane because she actually had a fear of small planes like that. So she said, if she was with him, there's no way he would have got on that plane. There's no way it would have happened. So she blamed herself for years because, I mean, she wanted to go with him.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah, she said it was the only time in their short time together that they actually weren't together, because she always went with them.
They were in love. At
Still
least
new,
they got to like experience that together.
yeah, still newlyweds. I read that a group of fans like followed them to the airport too to like see them, take off and everything. So I bet that was crazy to watch. Like, and then
Well,
finding out later that they crashed, like the next day, like finding that out and being like, I just saw them.
yeah,
Like you were one of the last people to actually see them alive.
that's ugh,
Yeah, and also
chills.
also being at the surf ballroom that night. I mean, everybody. I mean, those are
Yeah,
like three
the last
different,
show.
yeah, for three different artists, their last shows. The plane took off just before 1 a.m. on February 3rd, and it crashed just a few minutes later. What I think was weird about this, apparently they were watching the plane like in the control room or whatever you call it in an airport, and they saw what they thought was the plane actually descending towards the ground, and they lost communication with the plane, but like no one went to look for them until the next morning. It's like, it bothered the owner of the company, Hubert Jerry Dwyer. Apparently, like his wife said, he came home and she could tell something was bothering him, but he tried to, I mean, obviously you're gonna try to deny it. You're gonna be like, no, that didn't happen. I think he was in
Yeah.
denial. And then the next morning, Dwyer checked in to see if Peterson ever made it to the airport in Fargo, North Dakota, and they said he never arrived, he never checked in. So that's when, he couldn't deny it anymore. He hopped in a plane and he started to retrace Peterson's route. And
Wow.
that, yeah.
That's
And
dedication.
yeah, because
That's a good person.
yeah, because he's like at that
Yeah, I don't
point,
understand why, if they saw the plane was descending, why they waited a whole day. They should have had someone going right then and there. Like,
yeah. And I don't know how like communication and the systems were back then, maybe that was a
yeah.
common thing. Like maybe they dipped off the, radar sometimes. And maybe that was just, but you could tell it was bothering him because his wife said he came home and she just knew something was bothering him. He kept waiting by the phone, like for a phone call, like hoping Peterson would check in, and he never did. So when he retraced Peterson's flight, the plane was found, and the plane was actually only 6 miles from the airport. So, I mean, they didn't get far at all.
Yeah, that's sad. I wonder what happened.
Well, Peterson, the pilot, had flown over 700 hours, and he had been flying for about 4 years when this happened. But despite his experience, he was not qualified to be flying that night because
Yeah, in a blizzard.
yeah, exactly. Because the winter weather was so bad that apparently I'm not a pilot. I don't know this mumbo jumbo, but it kind of makes sense. Because it said, to fly in those type of conditions, one needed to be an instrument trained pilot. And Peterson had some instrument flight training, and had recently passed the written test for the certification, but he had also recently failed the instrument flight exam.
Oh, so
Like he
maybe he
passed the
didn't know
written.
how to use it.
Yeah, he passed the written part, but he failed like the actual test. And also, he was flying that Beechcraft Bonanza, and apparently the instrument training that he did have was not in that plane, that type of aircraft. It was like in a different type of aircraft altogether. If he had been instrument trained, and I was like, what does instrument training mean? I still am not quite sure, but I feel like you have to be able to read your instruments and rely solely on them, because if you're in a blizzard where it's like you can't see, there's like no visibility, like fog and stuff, like you have to rely on that. You can't rely on, seeing.
Your eyes.
Yeah. And apparently there was like something in the Beechcraft Bonanza, like something with the equipment there that could cause a pilot to think that he was ascending when he was really descending.
Ooh.
And they're thinking that's what happened. Like he thought he was going up when he was actually going down.
A simple mistake that killed 4 people.
The Civil Aeronautics report concluded there was no equipment malfunction and that this crash was just due to pilot inexperience. Yeah, but part of
Mixed with
me,
the 2 blizzards.
yeah, like part of me doesn't want to blame him entirely, because I mean, he thought he could do it, or I mean, he wouldn't have been up there risking his life, and also
Yeah.
I read somewhere that he might not have been warned about the impending blizzard, but I feel like you would probably check the weather report if you're a pilot. So I feel like he might have known, but I don't know if he was really informed on how bad it was gonna
Yeah.
be. Who knows?
Him living up there too, he was probably used to snow and storms,
And
so
flying in those type of conditions, at least
yeah.
to an extent. So the families actually learned of the crash with the rest of the world in the papers and on television.
Wow, what a way to find out that your loved one
Yeah.
has passed away
Like
with the rest of the world.
turn on the TV, or listen, like in the film La Bamba, it actually shows like Ricky's mom. I think she was like hanging clothes outside and like listening to the radio, and she heard it and like just collapsed. Can you imagine, like you're just doing something simple around the house, like hanging up clothes, and then you find out on the radio that your son just got killed in the plane crash?
Yeah, that's awful.
Buddy's wife, found out this way as well, and she ended up having a miscarriage like the next day
Of
because of
course.
it. Yeah,
That's tragic, but I mean, shock, complete shock.
very traumatic. And so, because of this, the way that the families found out after all of that, protocols were actually put in place to notify the families of like traumatic crashes, traumatic deaths, like that sudden deaths, to notify the families first
That's
before
good.
before the rest of the world finds out. So that was at least something good came out of the crash, I guess, because that was pretty messed up.
Pretty brutal way to find out someone is no longer living.
Yeah. I also read that, I don't remember who it was, but it was like one of the other band members. They got to, I guess, North Dakota, wherever Buddy and Valens and the Big Bopper were supposed to be staying at. I guess they had, a hotel and everything, and they were supposed to pick them up there, on the way to the next show. And they walked in and they asked like, hey, where are their rooms at, so we can go get them. And the hotel person working at the desk was like, they never made it.
What?
Yeah, and he said there was a TV on in the lobby at the hotel, and he looked over and it was on TV. So like that's how they found out. Like they didn't know, because I mean this is before cell phones and all of that. So I mean they were on the tour bus all night, thinking they made it safe, they're fine, then finding out they're dead.
That's rough.
So
Did they have to play like shows after that?
yeah, so get this shit. The
Oh my
winter
God.
dance party continued after the crash.
That's fucked up.
Like 3 of your headliners just died.
Yeah, it's so fucked up.
So basically, the 15-year-old singer Bobby V took Buddy's spot and sung with Jennings and Allsup at the Moorhead location the very next day. Like they still played that
Wow.
show. Yeah. I give them props for being able to compose themselves and still go out and play a show. Like I would be like devastated. I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, no, me either.
Because I mean they were all friends. So after the Moorhead show for like 2 more weeks, because the tour still had a couple more weeks, I think it wrapped up on February 15th. Jennings took over singing. I guess the show must go on.
Like he went from playing bass and like backup vocals and stuff to being like lead. So and then he had his own career.
Yeah, I'm sure that's not the way he would have wanted it
No,
to
but
go, but
that's how the cookie crumbled, unfortunately.
so the guys also took everyone's dirty laundry on the plane with them. Everybody from the whole tour, they took all of their dirty clothes so they could wash them when they got to the hotel.
Wow. I can only imagine what that plane smelled like with all those people's dirty clothes.
I didn't even think of that. Yeah. So
Disgusting. It's small, 3-seater. Oh god.
I didn't even think about that. Okay.
All right.
Did you know that every year the Surf Ballroom holds a winter dance party on the anniversary of the last show?
No, that's pretty cool. I bet a lot of people are about to boogie down.
Yeah, the tickets are not that expensive and anyone can go. The Surf Ballroom also almost looks exactly like it did the night that Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper played their last show. It's been like pretty well preserved.
That would be pretty cool if we could have went and spent a night there. Because when do they do it? Don't they do it like February 2nd through the 4th or
Yeah,
something? They have, like
yeah.
a couple nights.
It's like the whole weekend. Yeah.
Wow. Sounds like a fun time. And it's a cool way to remember all the artists.
Oh yeah. I have mad respect that they're still doing this like all these years later.
And it's cool that they haven't like remodeled it and turned it into some fancy club. I like that, keeping it
Mm-hmm.
the way it was.
So Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper were buried in their home state of Texas, and Richie's body was sent to California to be buried. And the pilot Roger Peterson was buried in Iowa. And apparently, like this is sad because like I mean it's tragic all the way around. But I mean Roger Peterson, it's not like he meant to kill them.
Yeah, it
You
wasn't on
know,
purpose.
he also died. You know, I mean, he wouldn't have been up there if he didn't think he could handle it. But apparently, the Dwyer Flying Service received like death threats and phone calls from like angry fans for like
Holy
years
shit.
after this. Yeah.
How brutal. That's not
Yeah.
cool. That's
It's
bad energy.
yeah, it's
Bad
like
vibe.
you know, and the owner of the company, he was really close to Peterson. Like I think he kind of viewed him as like a son. He really liked Roger, and so I mean that was devastating for him to lose his not only a pilot but a friend, and then having like to deal with these angry fans. So another interesting fact, apparently, you know, Buddy Holly's wife didn't attend the funeral because she had just had a
Why?
miscarriage. She just had the miscarriage, and
Oh,
it was
yeah.
just
Uh,
the whole thing was like really traumatic for her. So, and apparently after all of these years, she's actually still living, but she's never been to his grave.
she probably doesn't want to see him like that.
And I think now she's living in like Houston, Texas, or some other part of Texas.
That's a strong ass woman. That's all I gotta say.
So there are rumors of a gunshot going off during the flight, and that's what caused the plane to crash. 2 months after the plane crashed, there actually was a gun found in the field, like near the wreckage, and it was registered to Buddy Holly. It was his gun, and like he
Oh shit.
yeah, he apparently kept it, you know, for protection.
Because he's an up and coming big star.
It was his gun, and but there's like all these theories that the gun accidentally went off and the pilot was shot and that's why the plane crashed. The pilot's body was autopsied and like no evidence of the gunshot was ever found.
Yeah, or they would have brought that up.
And I don't think Buddy, you know, he wouldn't have like jeopardized the plane crashing by having his gun out. Like it was probably tucked away in some luggage.
Well, they could have hit turbulence or something. Who knows? And it could have went off, and that's why there was a bullet hole in the plane, and no one could have been shot. But I think he descended.
That claim's never been substantiated. It's just kind of, I feel like fans, conspiracy theories, trying to make sense of a horrible
What
situation.
happened?
So there was also speculation that the Big Bopper initially survived the plane crash and walked or crawled to get help because his body was found a lot further from the actual crash site than Richie and Buddy's. And Peterson, the pilot, he was actually still entangled in the plane. Like
Gross.
but Richie and Buddy were found like closer to the plane, and the Big Bopper was way far away.
That's weird.
There was this theory that he initially survived the crash, but like I said, at the time, they only autopsied the pilot. They didn't really do an autopsy on
Anyone
the
else.
artist. Yeah. So years later, the Big Bopper's body was actually exhumed.
What? Why?
So in 2007, the cemetery that he was buried in a section of the cemetery, there was like just flat gravestones allowed, like no like above ground markers.
Yeah.
So they moved him, they dug him up to move him to another section of the cemetery that allowed above ground markers because they wanted to build like a statue at his gravesite.
That's cool.
So Jay Richardson, the Big Bopper's son, who never got to meet his father, he actually performed some tribute shows as his father. He decided, since they were already, digging up the body, he hired a forensic anthropologist to examine his dad's body and do like I guess, an autopsy to see if he could have walked away or survived the crash.
So that's what you meant by he had a daughter and a son on the way that he never got to meet, but his son got to meet him.
Yes. So Jay hired Dr. Bill Bass, the founder of the Body Farm at the University of Tennessee, and he assisted with trying to determine cause of death for the Big Bopper. So the type of examination of the body that he did was pretty much just x-rays, and Dr. Bill Bass could see from all of the x-rays that he had fractures, like massive fractures from head to toe. He concluded that the Big Bopper did die immediately. He didn't crawl away, he didn't walk away from the plane crash. So that was his findings. There was no way that he could have survived it. He was just thrown, I guess, a lot further. That's just where he ended up.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It sounds like he was just the one that got thrown the furthest.
The Big Bopper's body was remarkably preserved, and his son finally got to see his dad. And his son actually said, "Dad still amazes me 48 years after his death."
That he was in remarkable shape.
Yes, and he also said, "I surprised myself. I handled it better than I thought I would." I mean, according to them, he looked pretty well preserved, but I can't imagine.
Still dead for a long time.
He actually got to see his dad. So the Big Bopper was actually reburied in a new casket in the same cemetery, just in a different section, and a statue was built at his gravesite. And his son, I feel like it was about a year later, decided to sell the empty original casket.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so
I wonder how much it sold for.
I don't know exactly, but now the casket is on display if you want to see it at the Roadside America Museum in Hillsboro, Texas.
Oh, well, I'm glad it went to a museum.
It's a little morbid, but I like morbid things. Like, I'm a weirdo.
Yeah, we need to go to some of these like weird, morbid like museums and oddity places.
Yes, I want to go to
do
Texas.
A road trip sometime.
I want to go to Texas. I want to go to this museum. I want to go to the Buddy Holly Museum, which is in Lubbock, Texas. And we could see his gravesite. I want to go to the Selena Museum, which is, I don't know if it's in Corpus Christi or like it's somewhere right around there, though. I think it is in Corpus Christi. Texas.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, Texas is on my bucket list. Okay.
Wow, that was a crazy episode.
Yeah,
we did it.
We did it. We did the damn thing.
We did the damn thing.
Yes.
Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and Richie Vaughn.
Yes.
R.I.P.
So thank you guys for joining us for our first episode.
Thank you.
Please come back for more.
This is their first one. We're only going to go up from here because we're doing the damn thing.
We're doing the damn thing. After all these years talking about starting a podcast, we started
We're in our
podcast.
30s. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. We'll see you guys next time, or talk to you guys next time.
Spook you later.